What is the number one wealth generator of a rental property? If you said cash flow, you're wrong. The number one wealth generator a rental property has is equity, and it's not even close. It's the difference between the amount of money you invested and the amount of money that the property ultimately sold for. Whether you sell your property in 5 years or 50 years, eventually you will sell or pass it on to your heirs after your death. What that property is worth at that time compared to what you put into it is going to determine how much wealth that property generated for you. Historical average real estate appreciation in the United States has been somewhere between 3 and 4%. Not that exciting, I know. Wouldn't it be nice if there was some way to boost that equity growth, push it up by 30% or 40% or more? Luckily, there is. In this video, I will share with you the top 9 ways that my business partner and I have added ridiculous amounts of equity to our rental properties. These are proven strategies for immediately boosting your equity by tens of thousands and even hundreds of thousands of dollars. Want to know what they are? Watch this video all the way to the end to find out. But hey, if we're just meeting, my name is Vitaly Volpov. I'm a real estate investor, attorney, and a part owner of a real estate brokerage in upstate New York. I currently own over 150 rental units, and my goal is to help 1,000 other like-minded people reach financial independence through real estate investing. Please like, follow, and subscribe if you find this video helpful. Jumping right into the list, the number one way to add immediate value to a rental property is to simply increase the current rents to market value. This is actually the cheapest and the easiest way for any landlord to add value, but you'd be surprised at how many landlords fail to do this. I would say that 90% of the properties that we have purchased over the last 5 years have had rents that were significantly below market value at the time of purchase. For example, the seller of this 10-unit property was renting out his 2-bedroom units for $550 to $650 per month, and his 3-bedroom units for $700 to $750 per month. Meanwhile, the going rent for similar apartments without any updates was $900 to $950 per month. So what do? As soon as we were able to raise the rents after the appropriate minimum notification requirements in our state, we raised them. You now may be asking, but how does increasing the rents actually add equity? I thought that you just said that the biggest wealth generator is not cash flow. Aren't you just increasing cash flow if you're only raising the rents? Good question. And the answer is no, we're not just raising the cash flow. I've done other more in-depth videos on rental property valuations in the past, which I'll link to in the description below. But generally speaking, rental properties are valued using 2 primary methods. One is the comparable sales approach, and the other one is the income approach. While the income approach of valuation is more concerned with the relationship between a property's income and expenses than the comparable sales approach, both of these methods do take into account how profitable a property is. So if an appraiser was looking at 2 identical properties with identical expenses, but one property was collecting $3,000 per month in rent, while the other one was collecting $4,000 per month in rent, the property collecting $4,000 per month in rent will be valued much higher. So if you ever find yourself in a situation where you bought a rental property with existing tenants paying significantly below market value in rent, the easiest thing in the world to do to get more cash flow and to add value to your property is to simply raise the rents to where they should be. Now, I'm not talking about trying to charge more than what other comparable apartments rent for. If you try to charge too much, you'll have a hard time finding a qualified tenant, and you may actually end up losing money because your property will sit vacant for a much longer period of time. You don't need to try to price gouge, but you should set your rental rate around the same price or slightly lower than other comparable apartments in the area. If you're not sure what you should raise your rent to, a website like rentometer.com can be very useful. You can go there, type in the address of your property, enter the number of bathrooms and bedrooms, and it will show you what other similar apartments are renting for in the neighborhood where your property is located. The basic version of the site is free. They also have a paid version where you can obtain much more detailed information. The paid version allows you to produce very impressive looking reports containing analysis of rental trends and other market information for any given area. This can come in very handy when you're trying to tell business partners and private lenders about the income potential of a particular deal. I'll put a link to Rentometer in the description of this video if you want to check it out. Moving on to the second easy way to increase your rental property's value, and that is by reducing expenses. There are a lot of ways you can do this depending on the specific cost structure of your property, but some of the most common ways include having your tenants pay for utilities, assuming they can be billed separately, renegotiating maintenance contracts with your vendors or finding new vendors who will charge less, shopping around for lower insurance premiums, and challenging your property's tax assessment to reduce your annual property taxes. I have personally done all of these at various properties I own, and not only did this result in lower costs and more cash flow in my pocket, but also increased valuation on appraisals when it came time to refinance or sell. So as an example, if a property was renting for $4,000 per month and its expenses went from $2,500 per month to $2,000 per month, because you successfully challenged its tax assessment and were able to get a reduction in your insurance premium, that property will be much more valuable in the eyes of appraisers and potential buyers because it would be capable of producing an extra $500 per month in cash flow. For this reason, it makes sense to reduce your property's expenses whenever you can if your goal is to maximize your cash flow and the property's value. The third way you can increase your property's value is by renting out parts of your property that are currently not being rented. Specifically, I'm referring to renting out parts of your property which you do not need to modify or change in order to rent out, so that there's no additional time or expense that you need to incur in order to immediately generate some additional income. Examples include things like existing storage space, parking garage spaces, and so on. If you have a property that has a basement with some room for storage, that can be an easy rental income stream if you want to offer it to your tenants at some additional monthly cost. If your basement has a separate entrance that can be accessed from the outside, you can possibly charge even more for storage by renting the space to people who do not live in your property. Of course, you'd want to make sure that the basement is dry and secure before renting it out to ensure that a renter's belongings won't get damaged or stolen. Similarly, if you have a garage on the property that is currently unused, you should definitely offer it for rent to your tenants or to third parties in order to maximize your property's income potential. Again, this is a double win because not only would you be increasing your property's cash flow, but also increasing your property's valuation because there's so much emphasis on income when investors and appraisers consider how much a property is worth. The fourth, relatively easy way that you can increase your property's value is by performing a light remodel of each unit. This involves doing things like upgrading flooring, repainting, and upgrading bathrooms and kitchens. This is the typical fix it up and make it look pretty strategy that most people think of when they talk about adding value to a property. But still, the key here to doing this successfully in a rental property is that your upgrades must also increase the amount of rent that you're able to generate. So if your apartment will continue to rent for the same amount after the upgrades as it did before the upgrades, you probably should hold off on doing them. Only do this if there's a return on investment to be made from doing these upgrades. The fifth way that I like to increase the value of my properties is by converting and repurposing existing spaces inside of my buildings into additional bedrooms. This works best where the space to be converted is adjacent to an existing apartment and can be easily accessed from the apartment. Some examples include an enclosed porch or a storage room that is separated by a wall from an existing apartment. Often it's not very difficult to create a door in the wall to connect the room to the rest of the apartment, run electrical, insulate, and sheetrock to turn the space into a functional bedroom. Add some flooring and an inexpensive heat source like an electric baseboard heater, and now you go from a 1-bedroom to a 2-bedroom, or from a 2-bedroom to a 3-bedroom apartment, which can add an extra $200 to $300 per month or more to your bottom line depending on the area where the property is located. This also works well with the unused attic space or even situations where there is a very large living room in an existing apartment where you can put up a wall and create a bedroom from part of that living room space. Obviously, make sure that any work you do complies with your local building and fire codes, and that you obtain the necessary municipal approvals before you undertake a project like this. If the projected increase in rent will pay for the total renovation costs within a year or two, it is definitely a no-brainer to make this type of improvement to your property. The same principle of value add that applied to methods 1 through 4 applies here as well. And you may be seeing a theme here. More cash flow equals a more desirable rental property, which equals a higher valuation. Method number 6 is similar to method number 5, but goes one step further. Instead of adding a bedroom, method number 6 involves adding an entire apartment. This method is more expensive and time-consuming because you will need to ensure that the new apartment will have the necessary amenities such as a bathroom, a kitchen, and a sufficiently large living space, as well as adequate sources of heating and cooling. You'll likely have to do a significant amount of construction in order to make it work, but depending on the location and the layout of the existing space in your building, it may not be all that expensive. For example, we've had very good success with converting attached garages in some of our rental properties into beautiful and spacious studio apartments. In our area, nice studio apartments still get pretty high rents, and because we don't need to build any additional walls inside the existing space, the cost of renovation is not outrageously high. For example, converting this garage in an existing 4-unit building into a studio apartment cost us between $15,000 and $20,000. and it currently rents for $1,150 per month. We should be able to fully recoup the cost of this investment in less than 2 years, but at the same time, because the building went from a 4-unit to a 5-unit, it saw an increase in value of at least $90,000. We were able to refinance the short-term private financing that we had on this property into a long-term commercial mortgage and put a substantial amount of money in our pockets from the additional equity in the building. Method number 7 is very similar to method number 6, but instead of adding apartments inside the existing footprint of the building, it involves building an addition either adjacent to or on top of the existing building. This is certainly a much more involved and expensive method, as it will likely require involvement of engineers, foundation work, and working with a larger construction company in order to get it done. But the result may still be worth it, because not only would you be adding apartments to the building, but you will also be adding square footage, which appraisers will definitely take into account when valuing the property. Personally, my preference is to use existing space rather than building an addition, because I feel like the return on investment is significantly higher, and because you don't have to worry about getting the many more municipal approvals involved with building additions. But that's not to say it can't be done or that it won't still be profitable to do. You should of course consult an engineer and an attorney before undertaking a project of this type to make sure that you stay on the safe side with it. Method number 8 involves subdividing the property into multiple lots. Now let me explain what this means. Let's say you have a 4-unit rental property that sits on 3 acres of land. The building itself occupies only a small fraction of that land. The rest of it is vacant and is not utilized for any income generating purposes. Let's say that the property as it sits is worth $500,000. Most of that value will be in the building itself. However, if you were to separate the vacant land from the part of the land where the building is located and break it up into smaller lots, you may be able to sell each lot for significantly more money than the land could sell as a whole. This is because, assuming you obtain the proper zoning and planning board approvals and do the necessary legwork, those additional lots can all be developed and built on. You can do the building yourself, or you can sell the lots to builders or end buyers, and they can do the building after they buy the lots from you. In either case, the mere act of subdividing the bigger piece of land into smaller buildable parcels can generate much more wealth and equity than if it wasn't subdivided at all. Method number 9 is obtaining a zoning variance or changing the zoning altogether on a particular property to maximize the income potential of that property. Let's say you have a 3-unit rental property which is located in a residential zoning district, which means it can currently only be used to house people. However, let's say that the bottom floor could easily be converted to business use and can be rented to a business if the zoning regulations allowed it. Let's also assume that the business would pay a lot more in rent than a residential tenant would for the same space. It would therefore make it much more profitable and would add value to the building if you could obtain a variance from the local zoning and planning board allowing mixed use, meaning that the use of the property would no longer be restricted to residential and part of the property could be used for commercial purposes. So the thing to do to maximize the value of the property would be to apply for a mixed-use zoning variance. This is just one example of how a zoning change can add value to a rental property. There are many other variations and opportunities that are possible depending on a particular property and its location. So again, if this is something you want to explore, I would encourage you to consult with a real estate attorney experienced in these types of zoning change requests. All of the value add methods I described in this video are part of the multi-step process that I have been using for years to rapidly grow my rental portfolio. That process is called the BRRRR strategy. It stands for buy, rehab, rent, refinance, and repeat, and it was coined several years ago by Brandon Turner of Bigger Pockets. If you guys want to learn more about how I use this strategy to grow my real estate portfolio, check out this video I posted a few months ago as part of my Chalkboard Real Estate Investing series. Tap or click the screen, and I'll see you there.